Today, Governor Katie Hobbs vetoed an immigration enforcement bill passed by Republicans in the state legislature. The so-called Arizona Border Invasion Act would have allowed local, county, or state law enforcement officers to arrest people suspected of being in the country illegally. The state of Texas passed a similar bill to this, and it set off a host of constitutional questions about the separation of powers between the state and federal governments. Today, the U.S. Supreme Court temporarily halted that law while it weighs the constitutionality of it.
Arizona State Superintendent Tom Horn says a